how is it that you're very like your English is perfect?
It's American TV. Like
Mm.
I read English books when I was growing up. I was a weeb for America. Okay, I was an America boo. Like that's part of the reason why it was so easy for me to assimilate to the culture here
Uh-huh.
in the past 10 years that I've been here, 11 years that I've been here now, because I was just always obsessed with American culture.
A lot.
Watched as many TV shows as I possibly could in Turkey.
Huh.
Yeah, and
A
that's
lot of
why
your critics would say you hate America.
Oh, of course.
I'm not kidding.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, my critics also say that I think 9/11 was good or something. They're crazy.
Yeah, I looked into all that in preparation for all this.
Yeah, cancel culture, by the way, exclusively a leftist idea, yet for some weird reason, Republicans love doing it and manufacturing outrage.
Yeah, there was
Weird.
I don't know but Hasan basically was reacting to something, and he said jokingly that that America deserved. He said, "Fuck it, America deserved 9/11."
Yeah.
But then you went in to explain. By the way, did you?
We clarified it literally immediately
Yes,
after. I was like,
but
I'm saying controversial, exactly what we did.
But did you know you were fucked though when you said that, because you said in a video game afterwards?
No, because everyone was like, why did you say that? You're going to get banned. So I was like, what do you mean? If you watch the entire video, I go, fuck it, dude, I'm saying it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how is anything I'm saying controversial? We literally armed the same groups and caused destabilization in the region. And then we're shocked when the very same people that we armed, gave weapons to, gave training to, turned around and hit us back. Like, how is that in any way remotely controversial?
Right. I think that's a conversation that takes place all the time. I think it's just the way you said it. People were like, oh, here we go. We got this young Turk, and then you're associated with the Young Turks, who, by the way, Alex Jones calls the Young Turds, which I think is hilarious.
Oh, I love Alex Jones. He apparently did a broadcast of that.
I've got the video. I was hoping to watch it with you.
Yeah, I'm so happy. Like, I was so happy. I love Alex Jones. I mean, it's very unfortunate that due to our completely destroyed public education system in this country, that like people take him seriously and then literally act on the psychotic things that he says, and that we can't all just appreciate him as like incredible content, because he is incredible
so
content.
Funny. Well, here, let me
like performance art.
And yeah, it is. Yeah. So, do you think that that's what it is? Do you think Alex Jones is a performer? Do you think that he believes that he drinks his Kool-Aid?
I think he got lost in the sauce at at a certain point. I think originally he had some even decent takes. He was like anti-Bush, anti-police state. He was like an old school right-wing libertarian that was like actually anti-police and anti-surveillance state. And then he made too much money and got like lost in his own sauce pretty much. And
I think he just followed
some of the shit,
I think he just walked the path of most attention / success money.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to watch this. Dan, how should I do this? The Alex Jones has a whole segment about Hasan, which I thought it was so... what did you... were you so stoked when you saw Alex did a segment on you?
Yeah,
It's going to be a highlight.
It's immediately after the thing happened, but at the time I wasn't paying attention to anything because I was getting an insane amount of death threats, like more death threats than I've ever gotten in my entire life. And I'm used to getting death threats in my line of work. Oh yeah, it was crazy.
So how do they deliver the death threats to you?
DMs, doxing, phone numbers, addresses. Like there's dox bins with all of my, there's dox bins out there with like personal information, just like whatever way that you could, whichever way they could reach you, they would.
And how has it affected you in your real life?
I think they're like when you get quote unquote canceled in that way, because it was so public. It went all the way to Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingram's show. Dan Crenshaw was on Laura Ingram's show, like crying about it.
I saw that. Because
it's like, dude, come on, you're a Purple Heart Navy SEAL. You're like literally like, I'm not triggered, but he seems so triggered. Like, dude, you're literally on the Laura Ingram show. Come on, you're an adult.
Well, they were like
to a fucking Twitch broadcast.
Well, because I watched all that in prep, and he went on the Laura Ingraham show, and they were kind of being like, this guy's triggered. That's the definition of triggered. But like, I mean, it's just so, because the right, you always hear people saying, let's just sit down and have a real conversation. The left just wants to scream and get triggered and all this. But like, really, I do think that, first of all, you can't honestly watch that and not acknowledge that you were making a joke.
Yeah.
You're being hyperbolic. You're making a joke.
I was being hyperbolic.
Yeah.
But you are
and I didn't mean like the people deserve to die. Obviously.
No, that was so clear.
that was
I'm
obvious.
sorry, but like that was just so clear. And then,
Yeah.
but then immediately afterwards, you explain what you meant. And so, if people want to have I think it would be way more interesting to actually just engage with that argument. But to them, you were just the perfect boogeyman.
It's the perfect soundbite they needed.
Yeah. It was
Yeah,
wild,
Muslim
man.
socialist, Young Turks commentator, like, pretty boy, look at him. He's saying he hates America and he's admitting it. Like, we got him.
Yeah, exactly. But so you were getting death threats. What was it like proceeding that? I mean, did you kind of disappear from the internet or just keep business as usual?
Well,
was that was so much shit. You were like in the middle of the biggest shit ever. I don't think you can catch more shit.
Yeah, no, the only way that it could have gotten worse is because they put it on Fox and Friends too, and I know Donald Trump watches Fox and Friends, so I was like, oh no, he's gonna tweet about this. And
my God.
I was literally like, if he tweets about this, I'm dead. Like someone will actually kill me.
Oh my God.
If he doesn't tweet about it, then we're good. And luckily, holy shit, it got to Fox and Friends and it stopped there. And then for weeks and months on end, I still get shit for it all the time. It still gets brought up in any conversation that I have with like Fox News commentators or pundits or whatever, whenever I go on TV. But it doesn't really matter overall. Like, and I was suspended from Twitch. All of those same free speech defenders who always are like, wait a minute, let's not deplatform this Nazi. He has some good ideas. Let's listen to what he has to say. Like people like David Duke and Richard Spencer. I'm not even talking about like, people at the edges of being a Nazi. The people who defend all of those guys were up in arms about trying to get me deplatformed very quick. Like they were not about free speech at all.
This is so insane. America deserved 9/11, dude. F it. I'm saying it.
We're there to partner with them. We're not there doing our own thing. We're there partnering and training
in a video
and
game.
Equipping and
Tim, why? So you said in a video game right afterwards. Like it looks like you knew you fucked up, and you're like in a video game.
Because everyone was like, "Whoa, I can't believe you said that." So as soon as I saw that, I was like, "Okay, in a video game." Like I say that for everything. Like anything that is regarded as like controversial or can be clipped out of context, I always say that. It's a meme in and of itself at this point. Like in order not to avoid terms of service.
America deserved 9/11 in a video game. It's just so ridiculous. Does it work?
Well, I got banned, so I don't know.
No, I don't think.
Capabilities. So that's part of what we're doing. And the other part is just knowledge. We want to know what's happening.
Like we totally brought it on ourselves, dude. Holy shit. We did. We did in a video game, whatever, politically.
Hey, pause again. He's so intellectual.
Look at the way that this dip is running his mouth.
He just called you. He just said you have fat man bitch tits, and he's making fun of you cursing.
Justifying genocide right now. Like how is this? How is anything I'm saying controversial?
Oh, so there you have it, Alex Jones.
So that part is censored on Twitch because that was made for me to watch, but that part was censored by a fan made edit. But that's the part where I say like the brave mujahideen skull fucked them, and like now even after all of that, like how do you not understand that like war has all of these casualties, and you're sending so many people to die, and that's what I mean when I say like 6,000, 7,000 men and women have died. If you don't care about the millions of casualties because they're over there and that's just war. And why the fuck don't you care about the trillions of dollars that we spent and also the thousands of kids that have fucking died on the American side even? But they don't. And that's very frustrating.
Yeah, that part about skull fucking his eye was pretty wild. But it was obvious to me that you were just making a tasteless joke. I mean,
Yeah.
But
well, yeah, for sure. Of course.
praises brave soldiers who took Representative Crenshaw's eye.
I mean, yeah, if you just heard that, you'd be like, wow, this guy's crazy. But that's not at all what happened.
That was a fun little bit there as well. So that was what actually got me banned from Twitch. Is my statements on that. When I was talking about brave mujahideen, that was a direct reference to Ronald Reagan and exactly what I was talking about, which is the mujahideens that we armed, and some of them turned into, some of them went into the Taliban, some of them went into Al Qaeda, and like that's a direct reference to Ronald Reagan era policy that was at the heart of my criticism to begin with. And there's that famous Rambo 3 ending sequence. Yeah, the famous Rambo 3 ending sequence that says this movie is dedicated to the brave mujahideen. It is, in my mind at least, like one of the perfect representations of how American foreign policy always comes back and bites us in the ass, but it is deliberate. So I think that it's on purpose. And that's precisely why, for example, Representative Dan Crenshaw cried about all of this stuff on national television, on like some of the most watched news programs on the planet, while simultaneously vetoing efforts or simultaneously voting no on literally arming Saudi Arabia. Like, so some of those arms have directly went back to the hands of Al Qaeda.
Why would
by
we
way of Saudi Arabia?
Yeah,
so why the fuck would you say no to that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand.
That's a question I wanted to ask him.
That's one thing I don't understand is how is it a partisan issue to sell arms to Saudi Arabia of all fucking places? I mean, weren't the majority of people who did the 9/11
hijackers? Yes,
they were Saudi
and
Arabian.
They have connections to the royal family as well. Yeah.
I mean, what are we talking about here? Shouldn't that be
and
like
they're currently engaging in genocide in Yemen, which even PewDiePie raised funds for recently, I think, right? Didn't he raise funds for like the current genocide, ongoing genocide in Yemen?
He may have. He does
perpetrated by
terrible stuff.
I didn't know about that.
So how is
perpetrated
it
by Saudi Arabia with our weapons?
Maybe you can tell me. Obviously, they have some justification. You know, they whatever they're doing makes sense to them. So I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. How is it that they justify arming Saudi Arabia? How is it that they think that's in our national interest?
Oh, Donald Trump already openly stated it. He said, "Do you have $10 billion?" If you remember, when Mohammed bin Salman was
what about a guy like Dan
promoted,
Crenshaw? How does he justify?
Well, they don't need to. There are allies. There are most important allies. It doesn't matter if they're, because ultimately they're just like killing other Muslims, so it doesn't really matter. And they're incredibly important for our geopolitical interests in the region. And despite the fact that a lot of what we recognize as like radical Islamic terror or whatever is directly influenced by Wahhabi extremism, which we propped up as Western nations, both the UK and the United States of America, propped up in the region, are all backed by Saudi interests. So all those like radical sects are being trained and given weapons to indirectly by the United States and directly by Saudi Arabia in most circumstances. But it's a never-ending cycle of violence that benefits the military-industrial complex. So it's good ultimately, and also they have oil.
They have oil. But anyway, the meme that you were saying, the brave soldiers, is this incredible? It's actually incredible that this was the ending sequence of Rambo 3. It says this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideen fighters, and these guys were the guys. Tell me about the legacy of the Mujahideen fighters.
You're not saying it right.
They are.
I'm trying my best.
They're fighter troops in the region. And they were fighting against the USSR at the time, and that's why we armed them, because we needed them to fight against the USSR in the region in the Cold War era.
Yeah.
And then some of them became more. Some of them decided, well, America is bombing the shit out of us too. Well, fuck them. And the simplest way to describe it is that they, much like ISIS and every single other militant faction, formed more radical and anti-Western militant factions with American training and American arms, and then started fighting America.
So it's kind of a beautiful irony, isn't it? So that's why that's what you meant when you said the brave fighters.
Yeah, and it would be ironic if after like the 7th oopsie, you got to recognize that it's probably just being done deliberately so that you can justify further engagement in the region and further destabilization in the region, because it keeps happening. We keep arming a certain sect or a certain militant group, and this happens in Latin American countries as well. We arm a certain group. That group becomes even more violent. There's even more destabilization, especially after like bombing campaigns or sanctions that kill hundreds of thousands of people, like in Iraq. And then that militant group is like, well, now it's our territory. We can just take over and do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah, I mean,
and they get even more radical.
What happens when you give the craziest people military weapons and training, and then just let them do their thing? I mean,
in a lot of instances, it's not even directly a consequence of their like ideology or Islam or whatever. It's literally that they just have no other options. If you grew up in Iraq and your entire country is bombed in the shit, your infrastructure is eviscerated, you have no future opportunities, you have no options, and your family members have been killed, then they feel like, well, this guy who is a little bit crazy, definitely real crazy, preaching all this hatred towards America, maybe he has some good ideas. And that's how a lot of people find themselves at the precipice of radicalization. Like Taliban increased its numbers and influence in Afghanistan after the American invasion, which of course is not that surprising. And that is despite the fact that the American forces there killed a fuckload of members, and yet their ranks are stronger than ever. And now America is negotiating with them as a legitimate entity in the country. Like they are a powerful and legitimate force now, almost directly as a consequence of American imperialism and destabilization in the region.
How many Iraqis died in that George Bush war?
I'm not sure about the exact number. That's always in contention, but paired up with like Bill Clinton era onward sanctions, like the immediate sanctions were I think 500,000, but I'm not entirely sure. They say to the tune of millions.
That's crazy.
In Iraq.
Yeah, like you don't understand that.
Yeah.
Like millions of people died from that. Of course they're going to be pissed off. I mean, what the fuck? That's crazy. But are we talking about like just generally from the conflict? Or are we talking about as a direct result of American military action?
So there's direct American military action that kills people, and then there's drone striking and things like that that also kill people. Some of those casualties are regarded as like enemy combatants and hostile. There's a distinction to be made between civilian casualties and enemy, like hostile enemy kills in combat. But then there's also sanctions. So cutting off aid or ensuring that the country can no longer participate in the global economy. These are really harmful as well. One thing that, for example, Trump did to Iran with the sanctions was during this coronavirus pandemic, Iran didn't have access to medicine that they desperately needed, and they could not get it. So anyone that dies technically is dying as a consequence of American sanctions in that circumstance. Same with Iraq. And the death toll is always in dispute, and it will always be in dispute because of the distinctions that I just mentioned.
So Dan, how many people died as a direct result of military action? Dan? I'm curious. Yeah, Dan. I mean, anyone who can just kind of pull up the numbers.
I mean, according to the Middle Eastern Eye by Nafiz Ahmed, this was 4 years ago, but landmark research proves that U.S.-led war on terror has killed as many as 2 million people, but this is a fraction of Western responsibility for deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan over the last 2 decades.
2 million?
So the number ranges from 2 to 4 million. Wow. I mean, think about it this way. Even American military, 7,000 American troops have died since the beginning of Afghanistan and Iraq. 7,000.
I mean, that's a lot of combat, especially considering how well equipped and how well equipped that they are out there, right? I mean, that's a lot of combat for sure. But what does Alex Jones think about all this?